Hey y'all, this is Tyler Blake with TylerBlakeArt.com again, and sometimes I can't tell if the counter is ticking on the screen on my tablet or not, so I have to get something dark like hair or shirt or whatever in front of it. Anyway, this is day 66 of my 100 Days of Making Comics, and I'm still working on the correction for the fifth panel on page 5. And the posture on this character wasn't quite working for me because it occurred to me that it kind of looked like he was doing like a mocking bow, and that wasn't really what I intended. So I've been playing around a little bit with changing posture again with him, and I was this is a 9x12 sheet of paper, and I only need a 9x9 frame, so I've got this area over here where I can mess around with some gesture stuff until I get this right. But so for now, I am comfortable with this character right here, so I'm just gonna kind of keep on rolling with that. So let's see. The last couple of days was kind of easy to kind of talk while I was drawing because I figured I'd just talk about my art background, but I've kind of already covered everything there. So now I am in danger of just babbling, and that's not really probably entertaining for y'all or productive for me. So let's see. It's a little low there. So let's see, topic. I could talk about I'll just talk about practice. Yeah, practicing art. So I had mentioned that for starters, I kind of was practicing just from copying comic book artists. I copied a lot of John Romita and Sal Buscema and some Gil Kane. We had those of you who watch the Alterna Comics channel have probably heard Peter Simeti talk about how when he was a kid, the comic shop was like 7-Eleven, and that was the same thing for me. Like, when we would go on family vacations, my parents would get us like a variety pack of comics off the spinner rack at 7-Eleven or whatever, gas station we had close to our house. And we were driving from Texas to Virginia to visit my grandparents. So you have 3 kids who are, well, 2 of them are brats and I was an angel. And they'd get us a bunch of comic books, and they would bring along other books and stuff to read, and we so we had I guess this is like before audiobooks were a thing, right? But it was a cassette tape with a booklet for Return of the Jedi was the one that we had. And I think we had some others too, but Return of the Jedi was the one that we played over and over again, because that Return of the Jedi might have been the first movie that I recall going to see in the theater. It was either that or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Raiders of the Lost Ark came out a couple years before Return of the Jedi, but I definitely remember seeing it in the theater. But maybe they re-released it a couple years after, because I don't think I think that came out in like 81, and I would have been like 3 years old. So I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have remembered that. But quick, just kind of a segue, funny story. My parents did take us to see Return of the Jedi, and at the end, when everybody's faces are melting off, my mom was trying to put her hands over my eyes, and I'm going, Mom, I can't see, stop it. Why are you doing that? Because I thought it was really cool, and I wanted to see that. Anyway, let's see, I segued. Okay, so we had a storybook cassette of Return of the Jedi that just had, it was like the super condensed version that would take maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or half an hour to get through. So, and my dad was so sick of hearing that over and over again. So, I think that might have been what spurred them getting us a bunch of comics to read on the way. And we also had like illustrated classics. Like I remember reading like The Invisible Man as a condensed illustrated classic, and that was really cool. I really dug that stuff. So anyway, good job, Mom and Dad. So that was like, you know, my early intro to comics really was because of those road trips. And then, I really enjoyed those. So once in a while, like my dad would just pick us up some comics on the way home from work. Or, we would be in the gas station and I'd be flipping through the spinner rack and I'd make Bambi eyes at him or whatever. So I'd get some comics that way. So we had like just kind of a mismatch. Because usually, like, the way the spinner racks would work is that it was stuff that had already been out for a while. And I mean, I don't think I even went to a comic book shop until I was a teenager. Like, when I found out there was an actual thing, like an actual comic book store, it was like, so, yeah, and actually the first place that I had a pull box at was like a baseball card and comic book shop. It wasn't even like a dedicated comic shop. But, anyhow, so, um, we didn't have like a good sequential collection. We had like, oh yeah, there was that episode of there was that issue of Spider-Man, and we had the issue of Thor with Beta Ray Bill, and oh, here's an issue of Iron Man where he gets his black stealth suit, and you know, I think my brother had gotten the first issue of the limited series that started off Wolverine. That was, it was Frank Miller and Chris Claremont. Um, and that was like, game changing for us reading Wolverine. Uh, so, that was how we got our comics back then. And it was always like, oh, I need to find an excuse to go into the gas station to see what they have on the spinner rack. And when it was a variety pack, you didn't know what was in there. It was like rolling dice, right? So there would be like, your superhero titles, but then there would all like, actually what I really dug was when there was like a horror anthology thing, they, I think they must have been reprints of some of the EC books, or I mean, it could have been like some of the Marvel, like Journey into Fear. Like Marvel and DC both had anthology horror comics in the 70s that were really cool, and I really liked. Um, but it's been so long now that I don't remember what all we had. But and then sometimes there would be like soap opera romance, and we're like, so it was myself. I'm the youngest, and then I have a sister who's older than me, and then my brother, who is the oldest. And so we'd be flipping through, and it's like, oh, there's soap opera romance, and we'd look at Corey like, do you want this? And my sister was kind of a tomboy, so she'd be like, and I was the littlest one, so it was like, here, Tyler, you take soap opera romance. So those always went unread. um. Anyhow, so a lot of the time it was, we would, there would be like a cliffhanger, and maybe the next time we got to the gas station, we had already missed that reprint, if it came to the gas station at all. So having like, a comic shop or Comixology or something like that where you can really get what you want is pretty awesome. Because there were storylines that I went years and years and years without finding what happened, because like it didn't happen until later when I was a teenager, where Marvel would do a reprint of something, and I'd be flipping through the previews catalog and be like, oh, I can finally find out what happens, even though I know that Spider-Man or whoever didn't die, duh, but you know so oh yeah, so I was talking about practice. So those are the comics that I had laying around that I would do copies of. And then of course I think probably a lot of us went through this, where when I got older, when I was a teenager, I had friends in school who were into comics, and so there was like kind of like the little trading. It's almost like a little mini economy, like either where you're like doing permanent trades for, like you have your favorite characters and your characters you don't really care about, or then maybe you're just doing like a little interlibrary thing where you're loaning your buddy your X-Men comics in exchange for his Batman comics, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of that. So that was where I got access to a lot of the stuff that I would copy when I was learning how to draw. And then when when we moved up here, like I kind of didn't have as much access to it for a while, and I walked into some kind of convenience store. I think we were on another road trip, I think, and I walked into a place, and there was like, oh, they have a comic book section. Cool, I'll go check that out. And I walked over there, and there was another kid. I was probably, I don't know, I might have been like 12 or 13 or something. And there was a kid who might have been a little bit older than me, and he was looking around, and we got to talking, and he was talking about Spawn, and I was like, Spawn, I'm not familiar with that. And he says, oh, it's done by Todd McFarlane, and I didn't really know who Todd McFarlane was. Especially like when I was a kid in Texas, like I didn't memorize like all the creators' names. That part of fandom kind of comes a little bit later, I think. So like if I was reading a book that was penciled by John Romita, I didn't know. I just knew that I enjoyed it, right? So he's like, oh yeah, he was the artist on Spider-Man for a long time, and I just remembered that I had copied a lot of the art in Spider-Man, but none of it. I didn't have any of the Todd McFarlane issues, so it's like, oh yeah, I remember that being really good. And so he was telling me about Image and all that, and when I finally found some of those, I was like, oh wow, this is completely different. So that was I ended up finding some of the old McFarlane Spider-Mans, and actually there was a story arc he did, with it was like a crossover with Wolverine and Wendigo and Spider-Man, and that was cool. And I spent a lot of time kind of studying those, and then that was when my mom got me the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and later the Byrne Hogarth books. And so yeah, my mom, she worked at a public library, so she could order like all kinds of books at like a really good discount. So I got like, when I was gonna spend my own money, I got like, I have like a lot of art reference books that I got at that time. There was the Edward Muybridge books, and he actually, how am I doing on time? You know what? I'm gonna cut this off. Tell you what, tomorrow I will pick up with Edward Muybridge and The Tale of the Zoopraxiscope. And if you've never heard of that, it's an interesting story. Okay, so, and maybe I will. I have that book up here on one of my shelves. Maybe I'll show that a little bit. So that'll make for a good topic. And that's all I have for right now. So keep reading comics, buying comics, and making comics. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Bye.